Hello, I'm Esther Githoyuat. It's Monday, April 18th. This is Africa 54.
South African officials say over 440 are now dead from massive flooding and mudslides. The nation's military is being deployed to assist with relief efforts. The head of the Church of England heavily criticizes Britain's plan to send tens of thousands of asylum seekers to Rwanda. Weekend action was hot and heavy in the Basketball Africa League. We'll have the highlights. These stories and much more on today's Africa 54.
We begin in South Africa, where rescuers searched for dozens of people still missing in KwaZulu-Natal province Monday. Flooding and mudslides have killed over 440 people. Paul Ndiho has more.
KwaZulu-Natal Premier Sihel Zikalala said a further 6 bodies had been found amid ongoing rescue operations following devastating flooding in the state, claiming over 440 lives.
In terms of the search and rescue mission, the current inclement weather has slowed our assessment and rescue operations on the ground.
He assured South Africa's search missions were back in full swing, despite being impacted by extensive damage to the province. In his address, Zikalala assured the country that the corruption over the awarding of flood relief resources would not be tolerated.
Exceptions of corruption, we want to say without any equivocation that all the resources allocated for flood relief and the recovery and building process will be utilized in line with fiscal prudency, accountability, transparent and openness.
Meanwhile, in a semi-rural area of Durban, 3 members of the Sibiya family were killed when the room walls they slept in collapsed. She is hoping police with sniffer dogs will come and join the search for their child. In the Durban area of Mariana Hill, police used sniffer dogs to search through the debris, and a military helicopter was deployed to help the rescue mission. The death toll had risen to 443, with a further 63 people unaccounted for. The floods have left thousands homeless, knocked out power and water services, and disrupted operations at one of Africa's busiest ports, Durban. A provincial economic official estimated the overall infrastructure damage at more than 10 billion rand, about $684 million. President Cyril Ramaphosa's office said he had delayed a working visit to Saudi Arabia to focus on the disaster over the weekend. Ramaphosa will meet cabinet ministers later this week to assess the response to the crisis. Paul Ndiho, VOA News.
Officials from a joint military force in Nigeria, Niger and Cameroon say the force has killed more than 100 Islamist insurgents, including 10 commanders in the past few weeks, as it intensifies a ground and air offensive in the Lake Chad region. Boko Haram fighters and its splinter Islamic State West Africa province are battling the Nigerian army in a conflict that has spilled into neighboring states for more than a decade. Multinational Joint Task Force spokesman Colonel Mohammed Dole says troops had ventured deep into enclaves controlled by insurgents in the Lake Chad area and recovered several weapons, food and illicit drugs. The Malian army says it has killed a dozen terrorists, including a French-Tunisian jihadist, in airstrikes. Terrorists in the forest of Ganguel, located about 10 kilometers from the village of Moura, were killed in 2 strikes on Thursday. The spread of jihadists from the north of the vast impoverished country has spilled into neighboring Burkina Faso and Niger, and the conflict has become more complicated with the emergence of local militias and criminal gangs. A mortar shell landed on the grounds of the Somali parliament on Monday during a rare joint session by the newly elected lower and upper chambers of parliament. Witnesses told a VOA Somali reporter in Mogadishu that 7 people were injured, including 2 staffers and 5 guards. The parliament building is located near the presidential palace in the center of the capital. The Al-Shabaab terrorist group is claiming responsibility for the attack. Al-Shabaab routinely carries out mortar attacks on key installations in the Mogadishu airport. The UN mission in Somalia, UNISOM, issued a statement condemning the mortar attack. The spiritual leader for 85 million Christians worldwide says the British government's plan to send tens of thousands of asylum seekers to Rwanda poses a serious ethical question. David Doyle has more.
Happy Easter to all of you.
The head of the Church of England has criticised Britain's plan to send tens of thousands of asylum seekers to Rwanda. The arrangement, announced by Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Thursday, is aimed at stemming the flow of migrants into the UK. But it drew immediate and heavy criticism from politicians and charities. Now the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, speaking at an Easter Sunday service, has added his voice, saying the scheme poses serious ethical questions.
The principle must stand the judgment of God, and it cannot. It cannot carry the weight of resurrection justice. It cannot carry the weight of life conquering death. It cannot carry the weight of the resurrection that was revealed first to the least valued. For as a policy, it privileges the rich and the strong. And it cannot carry the weight of our national responsibility as a country formed by Christian values, because subcontracting out our responsibilities, even to a country that seeks to do well, like Rwanda, is the opposite of the nature of God, who himself took responsibility for our failures.
Welby is the spiritual leader of the worldwide Anglican Communion of about 85 million Christians. Last year, more than 28,000 migrants and refugees made the crossing from mainland Europe to Britain. The arrival of migrants on rickety boats has been a source of tension between France and Britain, especially after 27 migrants drowned when their dinghy deflated in November.
That report was filed by David Doyle of Reuters. Central African Republic Special Criminal Court, a hybrid court of local and foreign magistrates charged with trying war crimes and crimes against humanity committed since 2003, opens its first trial Tuesday, 7 years after its formation. The defendants are members of one of the most powerful armed groups that have terrorized the nation for years. They are accused of killing 46 civilians in villages in the northwest of the country. The trial, which has not been publicized by the government despite international NGOs and foreign jurists hailing it as historic, comes exactly 5 months after officers from the Special Criminal Court arrested former rebel chief Hassan Buba at his ministry in Bangui. Let us know what you think about Africa 54. Africa 54's new Facebook address is facebook.com/VOA Africa. On Tuesday, we'll have the week's health report with Lino Mudu. And still to come on Africa 54, a rare ruby from Tanzania goes on display in Dubai. But first, Heidi Adams tells us what's coming up on Wednesday's Straight Talk Africa.
What does it take to run for political office in your country? Join me, Heidi Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa. We'll discuss what it takes to run for political office. Africa has the youngest population on earth, but some of the world's oldest leaders. Does a political candidate's age really matter? What helps and hurts younger candidates who contest in elections across the continent? Not too young to run is the focus of our discussion on the next Straight Talk Africa.
Season 2 of the Basketball Africa League is here. After a historic inaugural season, 12 national champions from across the continent are ready to compete for the 2022 BAL Championship. Tune in and follow the BAL on Voice of America. 54 countries, 12 teams, 1 continent, but only 1 champion. Game on!
Empowerment and humanity towards a better world.
Economic and social progress of every society.
Facts and information from key players rather than spectators in politics, business, science and technology.
City, rural, educated or underprivileged. We care and we listen to what matters to you.
Your voices are our voices.
Global food and fuel prices continue to rise in part because of the war in Ukraine. About 346 million people across Africa are facing severe food insecurity in the worst food crisis since 2017. The United Nations Children's Fund says last year the figure was about 286 million. Africa is highly dependent on Russia and Ukraine, the two warring countries, to meet its consumption needs. In 2021, Ukraine was the largest single source of food for the UN World Food Programme. Jonas Adaye, director of Institute for Peace and Security Studies from Addis Ababa University, says the sanctions by the United States and others have led to the spillover of the impact of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine.
The war in Ukraine has affected the price of wheat in Egypt. It affected the price of oil in Ethiopia, people's increasing suffering of the people. Across Africa, because most African countries happen to import wheat and other cereals and oil, many other, of course, commodities for survival. It also affects international relations, particularly trade. A lot of commodities were also to be exported to both Russia and Ukraine.
Russia and Ukraine are not the only world's biggest producers of wheat, barley and sunflower. Prior to the conflict, they were also the cheapest exporters on the market, making them attractive to low-income countries. At least 7 people are dead and 11 are wounded in western Ukraine after Russian missile strikes hit the city of Lviv, according to the Lviv regional governor. Lviv had escaped the worst of Russia's aerial bombardment from the invasion that started nearly 2 months ago. The Lviv regional governor says 3 missiles hit military infrastructure sites, while another hit a car tire repair shop. Separately, authorities say some of the missiles hit areas close to a railway station and other railroad facilities, briefly disrupting normal traffic. Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24th and calls its action a special military operation to demilitarize Ukraine and eradicate what it calls dangerous nationalists. The West and Kyiv accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of unprovoked aggression. Efforts in Ukraine to evacuate civilians from conflict areas were halted for a second consecutive day Monday. The Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk said in a statement on social media that, quote, in violation of international humanitarian law, the Russian occupiers have not stopped blocking and shelling humanitarian routes. Ukrainian officials say their forces in the besieged city of Mariupol will not adhere to Russian demands to surrender. They are also calling for more help from Western allies. VOA's Arasha Abasadi has more.
Easter Sunday at the Vatican. On what should be Christianity's most joyful day, Pope Francis instead expressed painful solidarity with the people of Ukraine.
I hold in my heart the many Ukrainian victims, the millions of refugees and internally displaced persons, the divided families, the elderly left to themselves, the lives broken, and the cities razed to the ground. I see the faces of the orphaned children fleeing from the war.
Pope Francis continued by saying the victims of Russia's unprovoked war on Ukraine share in the suffering of those around the world dying of hunger or lack of medical care. Meanwhile, fighting continues in the besieged Ukrainian port city of Mariupol. Russian forces have reduced much of it to rubble after weeks of bombardment. Ukrainian officials say as many as 20,000 civilians died in Mariupol alone. The capture of Mariupol would give Russian forces a strategic victory to fully link with troops in the Donbas region.
Civilians which are suffering for more than 40 days of this humanitarian crisis and in this besieged city, and they have no water, no food, no heat, no electricity. And we ask all of our partners to support and help to stop this humanitarian catastrophe in Mariupol.
The devastation in cities like Mariupol underscores the challenges of delivering humanitarian aid to an active war zone.
We're reaching millions of people, us and all the partners in the international community here inside Ukraine, but there are places that we can't reach, like in Mariupol and other places where Russian forces have besieged the city and are not allowing us the access we need. If we get the access, if we deconflict these access points, we can reach every single person that is suffering, struggling for food.
The Russian Defense Ministry, labeling Ukrainian fighters in Mariupol as mercenaries from Europe and Canada, says most of the resistance is either dead or fleeing the country. A representative said remaining fighters believed to be cornered in a steel mill there were given the option to lay down their arms and surrender, an offer the fighters refused. Russia has recently ramped up attacks on Ukrainian military targets as likely retaliation for the sinking of Russia's flagship of the Black Sea Fleet, the Moskva, seen here in archival footage. Russia claimed a fire on board caused the ship's sinking, but the U.S. backs Ukraine's claim for credit of sending the guided missile cruiser to the sea floor. Ukraine's leader asked for U.S. President Joe Biden to visit the embattled nation. Arash Arabasadi, VOA News.
The action was fast and furious in the Basketball African League over the weekend. Zamalek of Egypt punched their ticket toward defending their title with their fourth win in the Nile Conference. VOA's Jackson Bunganyi has all the highlights.
Zamalek had the lead early on, but Petros Goncalves finds Kaku for 2 points. Strong defense by Petros doesn't stop Zamalek Sosa from getting to the basket and scoring too. With under 3 minutes to go in the first half, Zamalek's Makini finds Mahmoud for an alley hoop that gets the crowd going. Down by 5 in the third quarter, Egypt's Strawberry passes to Makini, who gets his team 2 points.
Tries to find a bit of space. He's got a wonderful body posture.
Makini does it again, gets 2 more, tying the score to 52. Egypt has a 5-point lead when Rwanda's Domingo gets the ball to Hakim, who misses the shot, but Pedro is right there to dunk it in for 2 points. Sosa finds Mahmoud for another alley hoop from Egypt, giving them the lead by 8.
Top and Sosa floats it up. Mahmoud thunders it down.
Under 3 minutes left in the game, Sosa passes to Makini, who makes his way through the middle with a slick pass to Kedjo for a layup, gets 2 points.
McKinney tries to go through the middle, gets it out. Kedjo, that is beautifully done. What an assist, what a pass there from McKinney.
It's a done deal as Egypt takes this one, beating Rwanda by 13 points in Friday's second game. Cameroon's Kaumo gets the ball into Bias, who gets it back to Kaumo for the first 2 points of the game. Rwanda responds as Moraes finds Gaku, who makes a mid-range shot.
Clash of the Giants last night. That's a mid-range 2-pointer then, beautifully dropped in by Gaku.
Rwanda's Pedro extends his team's lead as he scores 2 and gets fouled on the play.
On this occasion, the hook shot goes up and in. That's a beautiful score, isn't it, from Johnny Pedro?
Petros Domingos finds Paulo, who gets close to the basket, but his shot is blocked by Fabs Bidias.
That's a brilliant block, isn't it?
As Toko gets the rebound and passes to Bidias on the other end of the court for 2 points.
It's just extraordinary.
With just over 2 minutes to go in the first half, Petros Goncalves gets the ball to Moreira, who makes a one-handed shot.
He has 5 himself. That is beautiful play.
Cameroon's Bidias tries to reduce Angola's 9-point lead as he gets 2 points for his team.
Incredible score.
Petros Gakou finds Dandao, who hits a 3-pointer, extending their lead to 10 in the third quarter.
Unable to keep hold of the ball. Look at that for a score. And it counts. That's a brilliant 3-pointer.
Under 10 minutes to go in the game, Petros Joaquim passes to Goncalves, who makes a quick pass to Pedro, but gets it right back to score 2 points. Petro is up by 16 when Goncalves finds Dandao for a long-range shot, pushing their lead to 19.
Now this time, they're getting their range.
That does it as Petro takes this one by 13 points to get their third win of the Nile Conference as FAP loses for the second time.
And there you have it. Rwanda, well, they protect the ring, doesn't he?
Zamalek were off to a fast start with a 3-pointer by Diogu.
It's just delightful, isn't it? Ike Diogu with a big 3-pointer.
McKinney added another 2 after racing down the middle for a layup.
And that is a fine score indeed.
Espoir fought hard to stay in contention as Nell hit a jump shot before the shot clock runs out.
It's a buzzer beater that's just been dropped there.
But Zamalek extended their lead with a 3-pointer by Islam Mohammed. Espoir answered with their own 3 from Kabuya.
We see a big 3-pointer coming in.
Ambanza of Espoir picked a bad pass from Zamalek, leading to a layup by Fulanganga.
That's a beautiful layup.
Mahmoud scored for Zamalek off an alley-hoop from McKinney, and the Egyptians extended the lead with a 3-pointer from Islam Mohammed halfway in the third quarter.
Oh, that's a massive bucket, that is.
Fulanganga answered with a 3-pointer for Espoir after a pass from Kabuya.
And there's Fuller again with a 3-pointer, absolutely in a class of his own.
McKinney drives in for a layup to give Zamalek another 2 points.
He just does the magic, doesn't he?
Espoir fought hard to come back with a late 3-pointer by Kabuya, but time ran out for the DRC team, which lost their third game of the conference.
Kenyan entrepreneur Navalayo Sembo co-founded a footwear company 6 years ago with a dream of building on the country's heritage of great runners such as Eliud Kipchoge and Wilson Kipsang. The vision was to manufacture high-quality running shoes in Kenya. Huba Abdi reports from Nairobi, and Carol Gansberg narrates the story.
Navalayo Osembo is the CEO of Enda, a company that makes running footwear and apparel. She aims to build on Kenya's reputation as a global leader in distance running by producing shoes while creating jobs.
When you consider just how successful we've been in the running space, but then also against a backdrop of poverty and high unemployment, why can't we as Kenya also create economic advantage in the running space, which we are very well known for?
Osembo co-founded Enda with Weldon Kennedy, a social activist and running shoe nerd. They met in 2015 and began discussing how Kenyans could benefit from their running culture.
Footwear is really the tool of the runner, is the running shoe. And so if we are going to make a big splash as Kenya on the running scene, it had to be shoes. And also it's because it hadn't been done before, so we had to try to do it.
Enda produces shoes for daily training, longer distance, and trail running. All are made in partnership with Umoja Rubber Products, a shoe manufacturing company based in the coastal town of Kilifi. Enda's high-performance shoes aren't cheap, with a suggested retail price starting at $120. 80% of Enda's customers are in the United States, 8% in Europe, and 12% in Kenya. One of those customers is Henry Wanyoaiki, a Kenyan Paralympic champion. The blind long-distance runner has used Enda shoes for 4 years.
They are shoes for training, like now what I'm wearing today, and also we have the shoe for competition. Enda is one of the what we can show to the world. This is something which has been made in Kenya. I feel good because I'm promoting Kenya.
Run Repeat, a US-based website that reviews running shoes, says running has increased in popularity over the last decade. Enda looks to expand beyond elite athletes into the recreational running space that is growing both in Kenya and across the world. For Huba Abdi in Nairobi, Carol Gunsberg, VOA News.
A rare rough ruby dubbed one of the world's biggest is on display for the first time ahead of an auction in the Gulf Emirate of Dubai. The 8,400-carat stone, nicknamed Burji al-Hamal and weighing 2.8 kilograms, was mined in Tanzania and made its debut at a Dubai hotel Friday as part of SJ Gold and Diamonds Callisto collection. The company says it is one of the biggest rough rubies in the world. Local reports suggest the ruby with greenish and dark purple hues could bring up to $120 million. The stone will be on display at different locations in Dubai for the next 30 days before going to auction. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our new Facebook page, facebook.com/VOA Africa. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.
Now the World Food Program warns that 45% of the people in Ukraine, nearly half of the people living in one of the world's greatest breadbaskets, are concerned about having enough to eat. But the fact remains that so long as Putin continues his war, so long as Russian forces continue to bombard Ukrainian cities and block aid convoys, so long as besieged civilians are unable to get to safety, this humanitarian crisis will only get worse. In Ukraine, for the Russian people, and around the world. Ultimately, the only way to end this humanitarian catastrophe is through a durable ceasefire and the complete withdrawal of Russian forces from Ukrainian territory and away from Ukraine's borders.